The Department of Human Affairs Administration and Policy section within the Ministry of Culture and Social Rehabilitation has only recently been given formal responsibility for gender and women's issues. In the past, the department provided only cursory support to women's issues and has progressed some work on having CEDAW, that is, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, extended. However, there has not been a recognized, prescribed mandate for this work. Today, the department has the mandate for gender affairs, but there is not a separate established gender unit. The very small staff of the Administration Policy Unit, that is, the director, myself, and a project assistant, work on women's issues. However, we also work on a host of other policy matters and projects. The department oversees two units, the Human Rights Commission and Consumer Affairs, and the long-term plan is to propose the establishment of a gender affairs unit, which will create a formal, government-based home, if you will, for women's issues. This will send a message that government is committed to ensuring equality for women and gender issues generally. 2010 is the first time in many years that government has had a real focus on women's issues. We decided that in order to go forward, we had to know what had been done in the past. So we took a step back and reviewed the only report that has been done to date, the 1997 final report of the Task Force on Women's Issues. This task force, set up in 1995, was created to review and assess the status of women in Bermuda and was mandated to compile and assess statistical data and information on the status of women in Bermuda, to identify social, educational, economic, legislative, or political factors, policies, barriers, or structures that prevent the full participation of women in any aspect of Bermuda life, and finally, to make recommendations on legislative and policy initiatives and social and educational programs. The task force produced a final report in 1997 enumerating 190 far-reaching recommendations spanning all aspects of life, most notably 78 related to domestic violence. The department undertook a review of the recommendations to determine, amongst other things, which recommendations had been implemented since 1997 and which ones remain important and relevant in 2010. After some investigation and utilizing feedback from the numerous stakeholders, we identified 7 recommendations which remain important and relevant in 2010. They are that an Equal Pay Act to be drafted and enacted, employers to be required to formulate written workplace sexual harassment policies, employers to grant minimum family leave policy, government to establish a fund from payroll tax to support maternity family leave, provisions for the minister responsible to issue regulations governing the issue of marriage licenses, adoption of the Quincy model involving a community, multi-agency-based approach, including a violence against women response team, and continuation of the Violence Against Women roundtable meetings and expansion of participants to include a broader representation of the general community. These 7 recommendations have been refined and will be put forward as part of terms of reference for a new Women's Council, which we will be announcing very shortly. The responsibility for CEDAW rests with the Department of Human Affairs. Cabinet recently approved the extension of CEDAW to Bermuda. However, in conjunction with the Attorney General's chambers, we determined that a review of our legislation by someone who has expertise in women's issues and some knowledge of the operation of the Convention would be useful and necessary. Such expertise is not available in Bermuda, and earlier this year I met with staff from the UK Government Equalities Office, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and the Commonwealth Secretariat to determine a way forward. The UK Equalities Office indicated it might be prepared to offer Bermuda the opportunity to shadow the UK during the next reporting period in 2011, so that Bermuda might see how a report is prepared. The Commonwealth Secretariat offered us assistance in the form of a short-term consultant to review our legislations for compliance with CEDAW. I'm very pleased to say that the consultant, Ms. Jackie Seeley-Burke, has already commenced work and will be visiting Bermuda for a week in November. We are looking forward to her final report, which will include an analysis of Bermuda's domestic legislation in relation to CEDAW, compliance with draft guidelines for the implementation of CEDAW, recommendations on law reform, recommendations on reservations on CEDAW. In addition, we have also attended international conferences and meetings to keep abreast of what's been happening with women. Our director, Ms. Deborah Blakeney, and Minister Butterfield recently attended the 9th Commonwealth Women's Ministers meeting in Barbados as part of the UK delegation. I will now turn you over to Ms. Blakeney, who who will elaborate further on the meeting and the future role for government with regard to gender and equality.
Butterfield and I were delighted to be invited to attend the Barbados meeting as a part of the UK delegation, and we were impressed by the number of countries in attendance and the varied topics covered. We were particularly interested in the discussion on the continual lack of women in leadership roles in the executive and political arena, and noted that the presence of women in most national parliaments remains at less than 20% in 2010. Bermuda's goal is to have CEDAW extended within the next year, and I envisage that our proposed new gender unit will be up and running by that time. That unit will be responsible for CEDAW reporting along with women's programming and the provision of assistance to the newly formed Women's Council. The Department of Human Affairs is also looking forward to celebrating the 100th anniversary of the International Women's Day on March 8, 2011, and we intend to take the lead in planning the diverse range of activities for those celebrations. This concludes the perspective from the Bermuda government, and I will now turn you over to the representatives of the civil society organizations in Bermuda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elaine Williams, the Executive Director of the Women's Resource Center of Bermuda. Formerly the Rape Crisis Center, the Women's Resource Center was founded in 1987 and is a leading and long-established organization focusing on self-sufficiency and equality for women in Bermuda. Since its inception, the Women's Resource Center has provided assistance to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault in Bermuda. The Women's Resource Center is a nonprofit registered charity number 267, accredited by the Bermuda National Standards Committee, that offers counseling and support services for women, provides training to service providers and key stakeholders regarding women's issues, and advocates for more supportive social policies and systems. The Women's Resource Center is located on Reed Street in the city of Hamilton, and we serve women of any nationality residing in Bermuda in need of crisis intervention and resources, and the local service providers that are working to improve their conditions. Our vision is women in Bermuda are strengthened by a community that guarantees them the education, employment opportunities, legal rights, and support they need in order to be healthy, safe, and financially self-sufficient individuals with the confidence to be empowered and advocate for their needs and for the needs of the broader community. Some of our historical accomplishments include, between 2005 and 2009, over 5 years, the Women's Resource Center has provided a 24/7 hotline service, offering confidential support and crisis intervention information, counseled over 866 new clients who have suffered from domestic violence, and has provided over 1,400 follow-up appointments, received 690 hotline calls, handled 591 files needing advocacy assistance, issued 211 summary offense letters on behalf of clients, and obtained 109 domestic violence protection orders for our clients. The Women's Resource Center has delivered a school-based domestic violence and sexual assault awareness and education program in many of Bermuda's public and private schools. We have fully developed and delivered annually over the past 22 years a 10-week introduction to domestic violence and sexual assault training workshop for key service providers, including counselors, agency representatives, police officers, and the community. While women in Bermuda have benefited from opportunities, freedoms, and equity over the past several decades, statistics provided by the Bermuda Government Department of Statistics show that despite being better educated and more gainfully employed, Bermudian women ages 16 to 65 generally demonstrate a higher percentage of unemployment compared to men in the same age range, 14% versus 7%. While 99% of Bermudian women ages 16 to 25 finish high school, 56% of them were categorized as at risk, meaning that they scored below the adequate mark in one or more of three categories: prose, document, and numeracy. The Women's Resource Center recognizes there continues to be gender disparities in Bermuda related to employment and education. There still exist outdated laws pertaining to these issues which need to be scrutinized and updated. Domestic violence and sexual assault in Bermuda are likely to increase due to recent economic and social trends, such as the economic recession and women fleeing economic poverty and entering relationships with significant power imbalances. Our goals and our future. The Women's Resource Center is working to further develop its partner network. We will accomplish this by our 4 pillars: coordination of services and resources, education, awareness and training, private and group counseling, court and legislative advocacy. Our programs fill identified gaps, allow continuous direct interaction with a wide range of women across the island, and provide great learning opportunities and insight into community needs. In conclusion, building on a strong history spanning more than 20 years, the Women's Resource Center will continue to offer crisis intervention services to the women of Bermuda, develop the collaborative role, and expand community education and training initiatives identified as necessary in addressing the evolving social issues. The Women's Resource Center will continue to work with other service providers, businesses, nonprofits, and government to implement its programs and achieve its vision. The Women's Resource Center is committed to continuing the work toward creating a Bermuda where women are empowered to live positive lives free from violence, discrimination, and oppression. I would like to introduce Ms. Laurie Shield, Executive Director of the Center Against Abuse, Bermuda.